Thank you, and welcome to the AI Adoption Podcast. I'm your host, Professor Ashley Braganza, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome a really fantastic panel to the first ever live audience, live stream episode of the podcast. Let me introduce the panel very briefly. Let me start with Janusz Marecki, who's the CEO and co-founder of Fractal Brain and an AI partner at Aaron's. Next to him, Lord Tim Clement-Jones. Tim is the Lib Dem spokesperson in the Lords for Science, Innovation and Technology, and he's also the founder and co-chair of the APPG AI. Maggie Sappho, welcome Maggie, runs her own business, is an SME with some very interesting views on how people fit into AI in Mary's Consulting. Zara Baralaloumi, who's the President and Chief Executive of Salesforce UK and Ireland. Zara, welcome to the podcast. And last but not all least, Alex Dalman. Alex is the Managing Partner at Faith, which is a big advertising agency in this area. So welcome to the panel. So with that, let's get into the conversation. So what I'd like to do is maybe start with looking at some of the opportunities and risks. And the theme for this particular episode is the future with AI. And I'm very keen that we take a forward view, because we are going to be living in an AI ubiquitous world in the not too distant future. Arguably, AI is ubiquitous even today. So let's kind of transport ourselves into this future world where AI is kind of everywhere. And with that in mind, let's pick up on some of the opportunities and risks. So how will we know things are different? How will we know that that it's different from where we are today? And which sectors do you think are likely to stand out? Janusz, maybe we could start with you.
Yes, I can start as we didn't do the live check out the mic. A very good question. Actually, first thing we should clarify is that what do we mean by AI? There are multiple AI approaches or tools. I guess actually referring to maybe the large language models right now. I will put them on one extreme. These are the systems trained on internet scale data, not self-improving. They're fixed in stone. And then there's the second generations of systems, which right now are not as smart. They're not trained on internet scale data, but they're getting better. They're self-learning, self-improving, continually learning. So to answer the question, what we're going to see in 2-3 years from now, in my opinion, those systems pre-trained on internet scale data are going to stay, for the most part, the same. Yes, they will run on maybe smaller devices, but they'll stay the same. They will still hallucinate a little bit. They will be useful. They will hallucinate. They will not continually learn. But you're going to see this emergence of the next generation systems, those continually learning systems, which get better and better and better, and they learn from their mistakes, and they remember how they learn from their mistakes. Now, to answer your question, between now and this future of the next generation systems, what industries benefits today from the current generation systems? But there's so many industries that don't require 100% accuracy. Yeah? For example, if we're filing patents, we don't need to have 100% accuracy. If you're running a company that's like an insurance business, you want to file claims or responses to claims, it doesn't have to be 100%. You can automate 80-90% of your claims processing department by using existing systems. So between now and 3 years from now, when we see the next systems picking up, we're going to see industries which can verify the outputs of the LLMs thriving. Now, if you have an industry which can check if the LLM is correct, they're going to thrive. But any kind of industry which requires ground truth information, accurate information, will still be struggling to adopt those systems, unless the next generation becomes live.
Great, thank you. Zara?
I think we already feel like things are changing. I think the pace of activity, certainly within business, has really accelerated. And why is that? I think we see a scenario now where we're moving from experimentation to actually scaled transformation within many sectors. And I think, to answer I think you had two parts of that question, actually. I think to answer your first question, what might we see? What would be the symptoms that would manifest, in a few years' time? I think productivity, we'll see an improvement, a vast improvement in productivity. And how does that show up? That shows up in, our citizen services that are already stretched, with human capacity. A really good example of that is we've launched at Salesforce Agent Bobby. It's already helping 3 police forces today respond to non-emergency queries without human intervention and releasing policing to the front line, and that's 82% of queries. I mean, that is phenomenal. So that's an example of productivity and kind of expansion of services. I think the human touch, the premium of the human touch will come into sharp focus. Certainly, even now, I think that's the case, and certainly in 3 years' time. And there's two sides to that. One is, the releasing of capacity because agentic AI or agents will help us expand our capability. It means we are freed up to give a much more focused level of human interaction. I think we'll also see a greater acceleration of innovation. I think that will kind of continue ever thus. And I also think that ethical AI and trust will be a competitive advantage and at a premium. And I think to your point around sectors, every sector will benefit. And I think you raise a really good point around that there are companies or industries that can't afford the hallucinations within AI. I think any sector that has rich, data sources, has deep workflows, has a heritage, these really, ironically, are the ones like regulated industries, banking, insurance, healthcare. They're the ones that actually stand to benefit the most in terms of upholding a level of standardization, being able to mine, longitudinal health data, lots and lots of transactional data from banks. I think SMEs, it's a great leveler for small and medium enterprises because they can now compete with the big enterprises without having to hire. And I think there'll be some sectors that will not embrace as well as perhaps they could do, and they won't put people at the centre of using AI because AI will only be good as the humans that can engage with it. So I think we've got an interesting 3 years ahead and beyond. And by the way, I say that based on what we or I understand today. Next week it could be honestly there'll be a breakthrough next week and everything I just said is rendered completely invalid, and that is entirely feasible.
Yeah. And when I was thinking about the question, I was thinking, I'm asking the panelists a really unfair question. Like, what's going to happen in 2 to 3 years' time? It's like, Maggie, Zara mentioned SMEs, and give us an SME perspective.
From an SME perspective, what we're seeing is that increased level of adoption, but we're also looking at how safe. Because at the end of the day, for an SME to allocate a lot of time to AI, selecting the right AI use cases and making sure that is actually implemented in a safe way so it can scale, is important that all the other elements come into play. So what are some of the other elements? We're looking at things like AI literacy, right? We are always as good as how much we are putting into the system, and especially when it comes to AI, the prompt engineering is so important. It comes back to a key area that I keep talking about, that human-centeredness within the AI adoption. And I think what AI is giving us the opportunity to do, SMEs and all other types of organizations, is the opportunity to become more human, to tap into the human intelligence so we can train the systems better, so they can serve us in future better as well. So that's what we see.
Great, thank you. Alex?
Yeah, it's super interesting because from my perspective, so I work for an advertising agency. We're fully looking at ideas all the time. So we talk about, will AI get rid of creativity and get rid of ideas? Because you can just ask it, give me a campaign, here we go for whatever brand. And actually it's been super interesting over the last 3 years, looking back before we look forward, how much we've actually kind of used AI, but used it with humans at the helm. That's the only way you're going to really kind of get the most out of it from a creative perspective. So, you know, when the best kind of creative minds use AI, they actually can do way more. We're trying not to kind of flatten that creativity. We're actually enhancing it, and that's been our kind of mission at Faith for the last 3 years, is to make sure that we're not, you know, diminishing, we're actually accelerating creativity. So when we talk about like creating marketing campaigns, there's always time, budget, resource constraints. Like there's so many ideas out there that never see the light of day, and actually with AI we're actually going to be able to do more for less, which is really, really great for us. We love it. But there is that risk, and we have to be really careful that we don't just divert to everything becoming an average, because creativity and the way brands stand out and the way we kind of, you know, do growth within kind of marketing plans is that kind of extra edge. So that's the only watch out, and that's what we're looking at. I mean, 3 years from now, I started in AI 3 years ago, and now looking ahead 3 years, I'm like, this is crazy. We're about to celebrate our 3rd birthday, and we've got some quite interesting experiments that we've got going on with getting agents to like talk to each other and try and kind of organise something for us. What we're finding is they need a bit of kind of moderation and organisation, or else they end up talking over each other, they squabble, they argue, and it's very strange. It's like we're kind of recreating kind of human nature. Yeah. So we're looking at that experiment at the moment from a kind of arts and science perspective, whether that will actually happen, and will it be useful, or will it be actually creating more things for us all to do? So that's the feature at the moment. We've also just done a bit of a retrospect on AI video and how much that's changed in 3 years. So where that will go in the future, I mean, will be amazing. Like Martin Scorsese this week came out and said he's partnering with Black Forest Labs. Like that's a big move, and he's obviously can see the benefits, but he's still, he says very openly, I'm using it to help my creative teams be better. So yeah, there's a lot of negativity, but there's also a lot of positivity coming for creativity down the track.
Thank you. Tim.
Well, I'm very glad that you characterise this beginning part of the discussion as talking about the opportunities and risks as well, because I mean, we've got a very highly polarised debate at the moment.
Yes.
People may have noticed we've had a papal encyclical, for heaven's sake, and literally, and of course Tony Blair, Sir Tony Blair, has gone into print extolling the virtues of AI, and there's quite a gulf between them. Yes. I'm as you might imagine, as a Liberal Democrat, halfway between, and I'm a conditional optimist. So I do believe that if we secure public trust in the technology, that it has huge benefits. But what we have to work out is how to deal with it in many ways. Not only how we create that public trust, because, you know, if you're a brand, you know, you are going to have to convince the consumer that if you're using it, supplying it, employing, using AI instead of employing people, you know, you've got to persuade them that you are trustworthy in all of that. And I do think that's a fundamental point. But also, you know, the impact on creativity. We've had the Alan Milburn report about NEET, young people not in employment, training, etc., education. What's the impact of AI going to be on them? At the moment, the jury's a little bit out. You know, the service industries seem to be very effective. But, you know, for instance, last night, at the beginning of the evening, I was talking to some people in the engineering industry who said, oh, don't worry, this is just a tool. We're still employing young people, young graduates. Then I went to another event where it was a major television production company, and they said likewise. They said, no, we're using it as a tool, but we still need young people with creative skills. So in a sense, there is a bit of a donut issue here in terms of service industries deploying it and eliminating what might be called tasks rather than whole jobs. But I think that, you know, I keep coming back to the corporate governance point even more than the regulatory point, that companies, businesses have to think about augmenting the roles that they have within their companies rather than substituting for them. And, you know, I know that sounds a bit of a pious hope. I hope I'm in good company with the Pope. We've got We've got a debate, for instance, tomorrow, initiated by the Archbishop of Canterbury in the House of Lords. So, you know, this is a cross-religion type of approach. But I do believe that, you know, we've got to be proactive in working out how we develop responsible AI that builds the public trust, that then leads to adoption of the right kind, the ethical kind of adoption that we've heard about. Because if we don't do that, and it's just seen as the enemy, then you know, we saw young people at a graduation ceremony in San Diego booing Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google. He had a pretty hard time, and so if they're starting booing AI in graduation in California, I think it's only tomorrow that here at Brunel, if you're not careful, you'll be booing Ashley when he presents the scrolls, you know.
All PR is good PR. I'm just taking, I look at Alex when I say that. Tim's raised some really interesting points in terms of public trust, okay, and understanding how the public are reacting. And you, looking across this audience, yeah, you are the public who are, and as are we, who are having to kind of absorb these technologies. And I want to kind of turn to societal readiness, because I think there's a big issue about are people, is society ready for this? And what I'm particularly interested in is the impact of algorithms on society, because you can begin to see that when these algorithms can move public opinion, they can sway people in a particular direction, and they can do it en masse and very quickly. So a couple of things to reflect on here in terms of societal readiness. One is around, you know, are societies ready in terms, and how do we build this societal resilience? And the other is picking up on some of the themes that have already been mentioned around, you know, what responsibility do businesses and governments have to strengthen AI being used in communities? Alex, would you?
Well, part of my other role, I work in social media as well, which is obviously very interesting and changing all the time. And obviously, yeah, the algorithm kind of debate, I mean, we have to live with that as well, unfortunately, and the polarisation, it can happen. But I think the weird thing at the moment is, from a societal perspective, we're all thinking about something that's very invisible. Like, it's something that's very hard for people to kind of picture. When other tech revolutions happened, there was kind of hardware, like the mobile phone, people could, or a computer, you could see it, but it's very invisible, and I think that makes it very hard for people to kind of understand. And I think it's kind of like the scary thing over here that no one really understands. But I always tell everyone, like, it's better the devil you know. Like, try to educate yourself, go to as many things as possible, read as much as possible, because that is the only way, I suppose, that we're all going to learn. And like any tech revolution, I mean, there's always going to be the bad side with the good side. Like, electricity, unfortunately, invented electrocution, but it also meant we could light auditoriums. So, you know, there has to be that kind of balance. Yeah, very Lib Dem view, sorry. I'm a Libra, so I love balance. But yeah, I think it's really interesting. And I would say the government at the moment does need to be probably more on the positive, hopeful side. It's very easy to swing negative on anything. So I think we need to kind of, yeah, do that. And as I said, from the kind of marketing and advertising standpoint, we are trying to be the more positive view, because, you know, we don't want to be saying that this is going to kill creativity and all of that side of things. I genuinely don't think it will. Everyone in this room has a smartphone that's capable of 4K filming, all the editing tools under the sun. You've all probably got TikTok, Snapchat, etc. You all could be creators, but you're not, because unfortunately not everyone has that creative mind or that ability. You know, we're not all Steven Spielbergs, unfortunately. So there still will be, you know, the best creative people with the best tools will kind of be the best ones out there, if that makes sense. But we're putting a lot of effort into training on the tools, because they move very quickly and some become redundant very quickly. So I think Sora 2 is now gone, which is a video model that a lot of effort went into people being trained up on, and now it doesn't exist. So you've got to keep up that training and yeah, never stop learning, I guess, in this industry.
Yanesh, what are your thoughts in terms of societal readiness?
I don't think that the society is ready for the current generation AI tools, and I don't think that the society will be ready for for the current generation of tools. I mean, those tools, they're great for many applications, but they are not reliable for two reasons. Reason number one, because of the underlying transformer technology, which is sampling from a distribution, producing distribution over logic, it says finite context windows, and what I want. So the technology is non-reliable to begin with. And number two, those systems are being pre-trained on internet-scale data, which itself, in my opinion, has a lot of inaccurate information, garbage information, toxic information, and harmful information. So I would never require the society to be ready for the existing AI tools because they're unreliable and they're trained on unreliable data. I spoke with Tim before the panel, saying what can governments do to ensure that the society is ready for it? Well, two things. I mean, number one, we should at some point completely abandon pre-training large language models on internet scale data. Tim, we have the Department of Education in the UK. What for? Well, we have it because we want our children, our students to learn from carefully curated curricula, from information that we know is correct, reliable, and non-toxic. I want our AI systems to be pre-trained on carefully prepared pre-training data that maybe the Department of Education for AI also, I don't know, I mean, you can talk to your colleagues. So that's number one. We want, for the society to be ready and finally embrace AI, we want those systems to be trained on data that we all agree on. Yeah? Not pre-trained on Reddit posts, no, forget about it. The problem is that existing tools right now, those LLMs, they are silly or stupid without being pre-trained on the entire internet data. So we also need to develop new generation of algorithms. That's what we're doing at Fractal Brain. Algorithms which are learning like humans do from small quantities of curated data. So again, just to summarize my very long monologue here, I would not expect society to embrace this current generation AI which is shuffled onto them saying, go, adopt it, use it, use it. They will not understand them because they're afraid of those systems being trained on toxic data and they're afraid of the technical limitations of the stochastic gradient descent trained transformer architecture. No? But that's a summary, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Zara.
I think people are smarter than perhaps we give them credit for. And actually, I think many people in this room can see through the hallucinations and the fact that the data isn't necessarily reliable. We don't have blind faith in data that we. I think what you say is valid, Janusz, for sure.
Project blind faith at the moment.
Blind faith. I don't think people have blind faith in the data that they're served, and I think most people are discerning, and I think people are experimenting and embracing with this. Whether it's my elderly parents or it's young children, I think everyone has a relationship or is engaging with AI in a certain way. Certainly these large language or frontier models. It's also really important to distinguish between the scenario that you've just described, which is absolutely true, which is the consumer AI. And I don't want to name any companies, but all of them, right? All of them, consumer AI, trained on unfettered, uncurated, inaccurate, manipulated, potentially data. And I think that is that's the case. We also, let's think about our economy and UK business, for example, or international business, and enterprise AI, successful enterprise AI is very different, because for it to be adopted and for it to be valuable and meaningful and trusted, it needs to be grounded in enterprise data that has veracity, has been curated, and is engaged with the appropriate guardrails, the toxicity filters, the governance, and has auditability and traceability and observability. And I think that is the difference between enterprise AI done well and the consumer AI that I like to categorize that you describe. And I think to your point, Ashley, around resilience and what governments and businesses can do, first of all, businesses have an extraordinary responsibility, and again, I give credit to people, because people will sniff out those businesses that don't operate with trust at the centre, and the implementation and deployment of responsible AI with trusted data, with all the guardrails that I just talked about, that will be the differentiator for businesses' survival going forward, and I think that's what we need. So number one, and we take that very seriously. You know, we have the Office of Ethical and Humane Use. We absolutely govern and control who uses our technology, and we withdraw if we are not satisfied with that. And we share those principles so that the industry can benefit. We have developed trusted AI development principles. We've abstracted those and put those into the platform, so they are inherent in the platform. Then on readiness, I think on people readiness, I think we've all got a responsibility. First of all, businesses have a responsibility to educate their people and bring them along with them. 61% of people in business today have not received any formal training, and yet they are using AI. They're already using the AI that Janusz has just described, but there hasn't been the structured training. So I think that's important. And I think just to conclude, how do businesses and government come together? I think there are 3 C's at the heart of this, and I regret that I created this. It's now stuck with me, but now I'm going to repeat it. I think number one, businesses and government have the responsibility to ensure capital flows, certainly to this country. And I'm going to talk about the UK, that comes to this country. We are the 3rd largest AI market globally. That's extraordinary. And since 2025, since January 25, there has been £65 billion worth of AI investment that has flowed into this economy. We have over 100 unicorns. We added 10 since the start of this year. We've raised 12.6 billion as economy, driven by AI, since the start of this year. So capital needs to continue to flow, and governments and businesses need to encourage that. The second thing is capability. The government have come out, again, this is not a political statement, I don't care which party, but the government has come out and said, we need to train 10 million people by 2030. And we as businesses have a role to support that and actually go out and actively scale that training. And everyone in tech is doing that, and so I'm really proud of our Future Trailblazers program within Salesforce. We're contributing to that. The last thing I would say is capacity. And capacity is about our government actively using AI to extend the capacity of citizen services, because if our government doesn't adopt it and our citizens don't have the same experience that they experience in their individual consumer personal lives and in their business lives, then we've got a really dangerous, disjointed economy here, and I think that capacity point is really important.
Sarah, thank you. Tim?
I absolutely agree with so much of what Zara said, particularly her last point about government, because so much of the acceptance, the trust, the readiness, the resilience is going to be down to how AI is governed, quite honestly. And I think it starts from the top. If government is going to adopt AI at scale, for instance, in the DWP or the Home Office, without the proper guardrails, without the transparency, without the impact assessment that a responsible business would expect to put in place, then I don't think there's going to be citizen trust in the first place, and that's going to hamper the adoption throughout government. And there's an awful lot of rather Pollyanna-ish language used by government about the adoption of AI in the public sector, the opportunities for efficiencies and so on and so forth. But we hear far too little about the need for people to be given the right kind of media literacy. We hear a lot about digital identity as well, as if that's going to solve everything in conjunction with AI. But it really worries me that we're not treating this as a pan-government, a cross-government approach. And funnily enough, Alan Milburn said you need a whole system response to what he was talking about. Well, I agree with that. Education, health, welfare, the labour market. We're seeing real issues in the labour market. And what worries me is if we don't get it right either in the private sector or in government, we're going to have to go through a completely unnecessary pain barrier, because I don't think that AI is going to, within a very short space of time, create all those new jobs that eventually, after 5-10 years, I think it will. I'm an optimist about new technology generally. We saw when the motor car was introduced, how many people involved with horses lost their jobs. There's a famous picture of Fifth Avenue in 1903 versus 1913, and in the 1903 photograph, I think there's a single motor car. In the 1913 photograph, there is one single horse and carriage, and that is 10 years in the beginning of the 20th century. It could be faster with us. But, you know, the motor car jobs were created over that 10 years, but it took some pain to do that. And you have to get people through that pain barrier. And, you know, that's government responsibility.
Yes, thank you. Maggie?
So I'll look at this from the business angle. Because, again, when we look at technology trends and how we have adopted technology over the years, you know, essentially, businesses are made up of people. And so we talk about societal readiness, like people being ready for AI properly, is the same kind of readiness that needs to happen within the organization and translate back into the society. So, for instance, within my company, we look at helping people to reel themselves back in, because there's a lot of, oh, where's the next shiny toy? Let's go for it. And we're like, let's reel you back in and ask those questions. What are my business challenges? Is AI part of the solution? If so, what type of AI? What are the best solutions? How do we actually bring it in? How do we govern it? How do we have a strategy? How do we implement it and then measure it? And when we're doing this, we are actually making sure that we're not going after the shiny toy, but we're reeling it back into what is important for us now and in the future. So, for instance, when we look at the AI readiness assessment that we have, we look at it from a readiness perspective as well as a maturity assessment perspective. When we talk about readiness, we're asking questions around awareness, right? And of course, people will say, of course I'm aware of it. Everyone is talking about AI. So when you ask questions around awareness in order to measure readiness, people would be aware and they may have higher scores when it comes to the assessment. But then what we're saying is when it comes to maturity, and if we're looking at a 5-point scale, then majority of people and majority of businesses, except perhaps the AI native guys, businesses, would be in, say, 1 or 2, because we're asking questions around what are you actually doing, right? And we're rating this across real business, so we're looking at business-led AI, and we're looking at things like culture within the organization. What are the fears that are not talked about? Are people saying, oh, we might take our job, so we're not going to use this? You know, so all of those underlining things around emotional and mental instances that impact how people use the technology. We're asking those questions, what are you doing? And that helps us really understand where people are from that maturity perspective. Yesterday I was in a conversation with a company, and so they design programs, and they actually have an AI readiness program that we were potentially looking at how we take to market. They already have some really good successes in that. And what he was saying was, how about we put the AI readiness assessment, and it's like a course, right? You actually get your hands dirty with it as well. How do we put it as part of the strategy session? And I kind of paused for a moment. I'm like, when we look at strategy sessions, when we're talking to the board, when we're talking about C-suite, you know, and we're looking at a strategy session, a strategy day, they don't necessarily always expect to be the doers, right? They're looking at the strategy. And so, but then they said to me, what we're experiencing is the fact that we don't have the common ground because the basics are not there. So we are entering a stage where everyone knows nothing, right? So then it means, how do we even train our C-suite in such a way that they can, and it doesn't have to be in front of everyone, they can have those self-led programs and training courses to really understand how their workflows work within the organizations, practice it, you know, how do we combine Zapier with Salesforce and all of those kind of things, so that they can then lead the strategy and take it out and then allow the operational team to do that. And I think that's where we are. That readiness requires people to really assume they're doing nothing and go and do it from scratch and then bring it back. And that's how organizations get ready. Then we look at the society, right? We look at social media platforms like Instagram, where you're supposed to tick a box to say this content that I'm putting out there was AI, supported. What is happening? Are people actually ticking the box? Are they being honest with it?
Yeah.
Or is it a case of if they ticked it, then maybe people say, oh, it's AI, so it's not believable. And by not ticking the box, where are the ethics there? Are we teaching, especially the younger generations, to believe that this is real, although it might not be real because it's AI influenced? So there's a whole nuance around it. And I think that readiness will come back to us as individuals and how we see our contribution into the world in a very large perspective, both from a social media perspective all the way down to where we are in organizations as well.
Thank you, Maggie. That's really helpful, because that takes us straight into the next topic, which is around the agentic organization. So for those who aren't familiar with the word agentic, it's about AI agents that are going to be doing tasks across the enterprise, so the agentic organization. And what I really want to understand now from the panel is, are we, in terms of moving towards an agentic organization where agents are doing the work in organizations, is this genuinely for real, or is this, as one of my guests said on a podcast of mine recently, this is putting lipstick on a pig, because all we're taking are legacy processes and putting this thin veneer of AI on it. Zara, let me come to you on this one.
I didn't say that.
No, that wasn't you. No.
That's not my phrase.
No.
I think just sorry, it's a really, really important point, and just to clarify the definition of agentic. What we mean is AI that can reason, decipher, and act on our behalf autonomously without human intervention. I mean, that's the purest kind of definition. I'm sure someone else will correct me, but just assume that's the case for now. And when we talk about agentic enterprise, the most dramatic scenario that we anticipate or we think about is that it's doing everything and there are no humans. That's not the case. It's about the way that we view it, certainly at Salesforce, as an agentic enterprise is one that utilizes agentic within the flow of work that humans do already. So which is very different from let's take the legacy systems and let's just put an AI on it. That's not transformation. That's just transition into a new tech for tech's sake. And I can tell you what an agentic enterprise is not. And by the way, I talk to CEOs and boards daily. Honestly, daily, and I see those that see it as a bolt-on and do exactly as you just described, Ashley, and they will be those organisations. I can see it already, those organisations that will be left behind. I see it already where the boards and the C-suite are not embracing it. They're delegating the responsibility for AI to a tech person. It's bolted on. They think they can build so much of it themselves, and they have a very limited understanding about what capability is out there, and they are wasting shareholders' money. They are wasting it. The agentic enterprises that thrive, and it is real because there are many of us that live it, are those that have a very clear growth strategy and agenda and understand how AI is central to that. And like I say, it's embedded within the flow of work and it's expanding human capacity. So it's the organisations that can do so much more than they could have done. Their humans can do so much more with the technology augmenting them. And actually, if I think about what does that look like, and I will tell you an example of us, because we are our most fervent champions of us being customer zero, by the way. But I do want to just talk about the CEO mindset on this and what an agentic enterprise means. And I was sat down with the CEO of a very, very well-known bank, and he says, Zara, I already accept, and he said this a year ago, by the way, I already accept that we will become an agentic enterprise. There will be functions that I can apply agentic technology to and conduct things autonomously and release my humans for higher value work. We're going to do this. Mm-hmm. So tell me what I need to think about. How do I prepare for this? And we talked about 4 things. We talked about real-time access to the enterprise data, to having the right data foundation with the right lineage, with the right veracity, as I talked about before. The second thing was, to your point around existing processes, recognizing the opportunity to completely disrupt and change processes, because processes today have been designed around human capability and human capacity. That goes away with Agentic. We have a really big opportunity to transform that. The third thing was around people. How do I bring my people along with me? And that is about, it is a change management activity. We can't avoid the discipline of change management. That doesn't disappear. We have to make sure our people are ready. We have to skill them up. We have to show where the augmentation exists. We have to define an organisation that has human capital alongside digital capital. We have to be thoughtful about that. We can't just apply it and then retrospectively think, how am I going to do this? So a change management activity around people. And then the third thing was around governance and guardrails, and where do you need control points and where do you need that observability, and how can you be confident and be transparent about decisions that your AI made, and how can you be accountable to serving that to a regulator, to an auditor, to your shareholders. So I think those are the 4 things that we talked about, and I think that is the essence of an agentic enterprise, using it to rewire the P&L and to be able to grow faster. And I think just very quickly, actually, on Customer Zero, we're very fortunate. We have a lot of inbound inquiries into Salesforce, and we have business development teams and sales development reps that capture those and put it into a pipeline and move it on to our sales teams to convert it. And we were ignoring some 10,000 leads every week. 10,000. And so that's an example of, we've got brilliant humans, we didn't have the capacity to be able to capture all of those leads to enable us to grow. Remember, rewire the P&L. So we now have automated agents that do a better job of discerning whether these are valid and really meaningful leads or not, and then putting them into a pipeline for humans to then convert. So that is agents and humans working alongside each other. And the last one I would just say, and we've got many other examples, but I won't have time here, but we put our agentic technology onto our help.com. So any Salesforce customer can go onto our help.salesforce.com, and it's a searchable bar, and it can answer, or a human can expect an answer to a simple or a complex query. It could be a question about a script or an implementation decision or a commercial decision. We put that on, and within 6 months, actually let's fast forward a year, we're now saving $100 million a year, right? Because between 82 and 84% of queries, complex queries, are now being resolved without human intervention. We didn't lose a single engineer. We didn't lose a single human in that displacement of task. We actually redeployed them into our engineering teams because we had to fuel the platform. So I just want to show you that at scale, with real value, with disciplined and responsible deployment, there is value to be had, and it is real.
Thank you, Alex.
I love the optimism about what companies are going to do, but I talk to lots of companies and they are so not ready. I think it's unfortunate. Not at all, and they don't understand the kind of areas that you spoke about, how much effort is actually going to go into setting up the agents so that they're doing things correctly, they're trained on the right data, as you said. There's so much, and I think a lot of people are just can't be bothered. Way too hard. And unfortunately, the rhetoric around AI from the beginning has been, it's easier and cheap and quick and it'll be done, you don't need to do anything. And actually, there's so much effort that goes in. And I really like when brands and businesses actually take simple tasks and get it done and then show the results, rather than, again, trying to tackle absolutely everything. So I do think we're quite a way off full agentic organisations, with humans still involved, obviously, but I think quite far.
I'm conscious of the time. We've still got 2 topics to go. Would the other panelists like to come in on this particular one?
Yes.
Tim, quick one, and then I'm going to move on.
Alex, it's very interesting what she said, because I think the advertising world is on exactly the right track. I've had the Advertising Association demonstrate to me avatars that check on, if you like, agentic systems that place advertising digitally. And one of the worries for big brands is, is my advertising placed next door to pornography or something of that sort? And there's a great deal of work that's been done by the advertising industry, quite rightly, on making sure that the right thing actually happens. So you have to kind of use technology to check on technology. So I'm very much in favour of that. But at the end of the day, and I was very interested to hear what Maggie said about the C-suite. I mean, in my experience, and I advise a law firm, my experience, there are an awful lot of C-suites who don't have a clue about AI, and what they need to do, especially with agentic AI, is take accountability. They have to brief themselves far more than they do about the possibilities, the opportunities, but also the risks, but also take accountability for the systems that they put in, and decide where it's appropriate for a human to be put in the loop. And especially, for instance, in the hiring process, there are quite a lot of recruitment consultancies now that have banded together to set out codes of practice in terms of hiring, where AI is now so frequently used. There are so many young people now who all they see when they apply for a job in a service industry is an AI assessment, basically, and they don't see a human being throughout that beginning process. They might once they've got through about 3 or 4 hoops. But it is a soul-destroying thing, and
it's been like that for a while. I tried to get a job in the recession, 2009, and it was the same. We didn't have AI then, and it was still awful. No humans got back to you anyway. So.
No. And it's got worse.
It's got worse.
And there's no accountability. There's no empathy being displayed by those who are deploying these tools, and that's what worries me. And anybody with, a graduate son or daughter, or an impending graduate son or daughter, knows that that's the case, and you don't get a response, you don't even get feedback, things of that sort. So I think that I would start at the boardroom and say, look, guys, when you deploy AI, you've really got to take accountability.
So on that point then, Tim, on accountability, clearly having the right regulatory frameworks and making sure that AI is regulated appropriately. What are your thoughts? Is there enough being done on the regulatory aspects of AI? Is it being managed in an ethical way?
Well, you see, one of the big problems at the moment is we've got this kind of mantra that is deployed, especially by big tech, that regulation is the enemy of innovation. And I think appropriate regulation is actually for the benefit of innovation. I think that if you have clarity, consistency, and everybody in a sense understands what the regime is, you're much more likely to find that people aren't worried about the gaps in the regulation or the governance. They've got the guidelines that they know pretty much what's expected of them. And I think then people wave around the EU AI Act as this terrible bit of legislation. Well, of course it's highly complicated. It is risk-based. I wouldn't go down that track myself particularly, but what I would do is go for global standards, international standards, where if I was an AI developer, I'd know that there was some interoperability there, and I would be able to exploit my model more or less anywhere. And those international standards are out there. The Americans, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, for instance, in the States, and we don't think of the States as being a regulator in any sense, but they've developed standards for risk assessment, which I think pretty fit for purpose. There are other standards relating to transparency, continuous monitoring, training, and so on, which could be adopted, I think, relatively easily without it being a great bureaucratic leap. And I think that would then encourage some of those who aren't adopting to adopt, and I think it would create greater public trust. So, you know, in terms of the consumer and the, if you like, the ordinary citizen adopter, I think that would create a better platform as well. So, we have these arguments. We've got a debate this afternoon on to regulate or not to regulate. We keep getting dusty answers from government, but eventually, and they promised it in the manifesto, it didn't come through. Still hasn't come through, and we're still waiting.
Okay, Janusz, as a CEO, as a founder at that front end, I want to cover the last question, the last issue as well. What are your thoughts in terms of how is Fractal Brain dealing on the regulatory ethical front?
Let me make an analogy here.
Yeah.
You could regulate the development of jet engine in 1941, 42. But the Germans came up with the rocket engine, completely different. It's the same thing with AI right now. You can impose the number of parameters in your regulatory framework. Let's say if it's more than 100 billion, you can report it. You can regulate your training set shouldn't be bigger than 1 trillion tokens, you have to report it. We're building systems at Fractal Brain that do not use a fixed number of parameters. They grow all the time. They don't use neurons, they use microcolumns, it's different. They don't require billions, trillions of tokens of data. Just like human beings require only 100 million to learn language, we require 100 million. So how can a regulatory framework constrain such startups such as us? I just don't see that. Yes, you can constrain Anthropic, DeepMind, what's the other one? XAI, no? Yeah, you can, because they're using the equivalent of a jet engine and they need to have internet scale data. But Werner von Braun in 1937 did not require that technology. He built rockets using something different. I would want to be an optimist on the regulatory framework. I just don't see that. The only thing that we can really do is, going back to what I mentioned to Tim, we should put a framework saying that whatever AI company you have, you can only train it on curated data. And the Department of Education can do that. And I don't care if Anthropic doesn't have a clue how to do that, or what's the other one, OpenAI. DeepMind actually knows how to do that. Demis Hassab, he knows that things can be done differently. I don't care, they don't know how to do this thing. We should be responsible, okay? We should not pre-train systems which are psychopaths on internet scale data, hallucinating. Yes, we can constrain them with guardrails. This is great, we can do that. But then they're becoming specific and specific and specific. They add business value, but the public imagination right now is in this general AI, AGI, and all those things. So you're adding business value by constraining them, which is the right thing to do, but you're kind of detracting them from being AGIs, and that's not what some Alphonse we hear.
We might have wanted to constrain Werner von Braun slightly, by the way, but there we go.
Just the point, it's not necessarily constraint. It's when I talk about guardrails, it's about things like being able to use any model that a company wants, but being able to mask personally identifiable data before it uses a model. And then when a model returns information, I know there's Purus, it's not like that, it's RAG, but when essentially the data comes back into the flow of work, it's being able to apply the right toxicity and bias filters. So it's applying safety, not constraint. Constraint, then you're in determinism, and then you're in chatbots, and that's pointless. It's about utilising the best model for the best job and setting a parameter around hallucination, because some companies want that hallucination, believe it or not, and some just can't afford it. So it's not about constraining, it's about using and applying it safely.
I'd like to move on then. I mean, this issue on regulation, I thought you've got to have it because there is such a wide range of views, and how you actually operationalise it, I think, is the big challenge still. But the last item on our topics is the impact on people, the impact on jobs. How is AI going to play out on this major issue? Maggie, and I'm conscious we've got, as ever, and I hold my hand up, I'm a terrible timekeeper. But Maggie, and I'd like to get a quick round as well from everyone. So Maggie, go ahead.
Yeah, so for us, the fundamentals has always been human-centered AI adoption. But I've always talked about AI and the future of growth and AI and the future of work. And specifically when it comes to the people aspects, again, it's about what are jobs becoming for us, right? It's not like the jobs are going away, but the types of jobs that we used to do are shifting to a new kind of role. And what does that look like? It means that we are meant to become more human. That's my simplest way of saying it. It's about using more emotional intelligence and more responsible ways of using technology. And that goes across the board, across every field or sector. So, for instance, the actual designer, the tech geek, are they applying the right levels of emotional intelligence when developing the product to make sure that less of the black holes are created. We have roles that I call the explainer. It came out from MIT research back in 2019 when I was speaking at Tech Summit, and I talked about the explainer role being someone who is able to sit between the silos within the departments in an organization and be able to listen to what everyone is saying and come with a single line of thread that actually communicates in a way that everyone understands so we can move forward in confidence. So it's about that. It's about how is your role shifting within your organization, within your environment? How is your organization supporting you to really lean into that role? And AI literacy is part of it, but so many other ways are part of it as well.
Thank you, Maggie. Zara, you've talked about the impact of AI even within Salesforce. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think, look, the nature of roles, the nature of jobs, I completely agree with you, Maggie. They are changing, and I'll just make it a very, I can give you the stats. We work with IDC. They project some 500,000 new jobs will be created by 2028. I'd like to believe that's true. Whether that will happen and at the rate that it is projected, that I think that remains to be seen. And jobs are disrupted. But I would just say this. When I graduated from Brunel University in '97, I didn't expect to do what I did, but I joined a company called Anderson Consulting, and I started as a business analyst. And so let's just for a split second deconstruct what that actually meant. So nature of the job back then. Companies would have business problems. My role conceptually was to go in, understand the business problem, capture a series of requirements, pass that on to a technical analyst who would convert them into technical requirements. Then it would be sent to somebody to build, and then that would be built, and then it would be tested, and then it would be user acceptance tested, and then it would be deployed. Goodness me, I don't know how we actually did that, but we did it. So that is what I did when I came out. The tasks might be different, but the need hasn't changed. So if I was graduating today and I was in that position, rather than doing all of those things in linear steps in a waterfall way, and on the way we had kind of agile and we sexed it up a bit, excuse me. But now I'd still be sat in front of a customer trying to understand their challenge and their business need. But instead of doing all of those steps, I might, let's assume I've got AI literacy, I might now build that out in real time and prototype it and be able to say, and have a much shorter feedback loop. So rather than going through all of those steps, my role might be demonstrating, showing, putting it and deploying it. So that, I think, doesn't go away. It's just the nature of the role. It's still an analyst, but it's just a different type of activity that I'll be conducting to get to the same outcome. Yeah.
Tim, you raised the question earlier about, are jobs going to be created fast enough? What are your thoughts in terms of the impact on people and jobs?
Yeah, well, I entirely agree. I'm slightly sceptical about the 2028. I mean, good heavens. Especially in the UK, we're not that quick as adopters, even though, as mentioned, we are the third largest market. which is good. But I think what we need to take is a societal approach to this. I mean, I entirely accept that, you know, we're talking about enterprises here, but how does government basically approach this? Well, I think you have to take a really positive approach to this. You have to say, what do we want AI for? We want AI to create life chances.
Yeah.
We want to actually use this technology to improve workplace employment, to the workplace experience, to help people who don't have the skills actually perform jobs that they couldn't do without AI, which could be a magnificent thing. People, you know, would enhance their pay and so on. But it needs that kind of positive approach. It means that we need to develop media literacy to a much greater degree than we've got. We need to upskill people. I mean, you know, just somebody having a little bit of guidance on prompt engineering for an AI tool is a fantastic thing. I mean, I'm afraid to say, at my ripe old age, I spend some of my time training my fellow peers how to use artificial intelligence tools, you know, to research, to write speeches, all that side of things. And, you know, instantly they benefit from it. And, you know, younger people would benefit even more, quite frankly. You'd be horrified to know what the average age of a member of the House of Lords is.
I couldn't agree more on the young kind of new entrants in the job market. We're actually seeing that our juniors who have embraced AI are actually leapfrogging ahead. They're really amazing. Like the creatives that use it, I think they're going to be like the amazing next generation. So, and we're hiring AI creatives now, which is odd. We're hiring AI prompt engineers. So we've done a lot more hiring. Now, our CEO actually wants to double the junior intake because he believes in that so much. So I'm more optimistic. Obviously, there's going to be that change, and there is still that fear. And creatives obviously they care about their art and where that goes. So we have to balance that. But overall, we're seeing great stuff from our juniors. So
Thank you.
AI doesn't replace humans.
no.
Humans that use AI well will replace humans.
It's
about honing into our craft.
That's the way forward.
Last word.
I promise just last sentence. So going back to teams upskilling, the existing AI tools do not learn on the job. So the jobs of the future for everyone here are the jobs where you're required to learn on the job. Then you're going to be better than AIs.
Great. Can we just say thank you to the panel for sharing their views so openly. Thank you to all of you for joining. For those online, thank you as well.